So first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Namita Vishwanath, and the topic that we are going to discuss today is development of GIT. So, uh, why are we, or why you want to learn the development of GIT is during your clinical practice, you find different cases in GIT. Say, umbilical hernia, or say duodenal atresia, duodenal stenosis, esophageal atresia, malrotation of gut, different anomalies you noticed in your clinical practice. All these are produced as a result of some developmental change in the normal development of GIT. So you should be very well aware what is the normal development and what abnormality in normal development has produced that abnormality. Fine. So that is why we are worried, or you should learn about the development of GIT. So this development of GIT starts with the folding of embryo. I think you are very well aware of the folding of embryo. You find two foldings are developing, one head fold, then you get a tail folding and two lateral foldings. So as a result of this folding of embryo, what happens is you find the endodermal layer. You remember the endodermal layer? Okay. So this endodermal layer with the incorporation of yolk sac will form the primitive gut. So what is actually this primitive gut? It is after folding this endodermal line tube. Here you find here, along with the incorporation of the yolk sac, will form your primitive gut, and it is from this primitive gut you find your GIT is developing. So that is the basis of development of GIT. So now, with the formation of the primitive gut, you have to subdivide, or you subdivide the primitive gut as foregut. This is the midgut and this is the hindgut. So what is foregut? Foregut means it is that part which lies cranial to the midgut. So first we'll define midgut. So midgut is that part which directly communicates with the yolk sac. Initially you find this midgut is in direct communication with the yolk sac through a wide opening. But later what happens is this wide opening gets narrowed so as to form a small duct there termed as the vitellointestinal duct. So that is your first part, midgut. That part which lies in front of it, that is what is termed as in front or cranial to it or in the head fold. That is what is termed as the foregut. And that part which lies caudal to it, caudal to midgut, and that is what is termed as the hindgut. And you find a small diverticulum also coming from the hindgut, and that is what is termed as allantois. So primitive gut is now subdivided into foregut, midgut and hindgut. I think that much is clear. Okay. So now what happens is this primitive gut is now a closed membrane or a closed tube. It is not communicating with the exterior. So what happens is, this is the cranial end, this is the caudal end. Look at that. This what you see here, this is your primitive gut, and you find the primitive gut is closed cranially as well as caudally by two membranes. So cranially, this primitive gut is being closed by a membrane termed as the buccopharyngeal membrane. So buccopharyngeal membrane will close the primitive gut, or it will separate the primitive gut from stomodium. This is the region of stomodium. Stomodium is the region that is going to become the mouth, part of mouth. Okay. So what happens is this buccopharyngeal membrane is closing or separating the primitive gut cranially from stomodium, and posteriorly or caudally, not posteriorly, it is caudally, you find the membrane there termed as the cloacal membrane. So that cloacal membrane will separate the hindgut from the outer projection there, outer part there termed as the proctodium. Okay. So now what happens is, as the development occurs, this buccopharyngeal membrane and this cloacal membrane will rupture. Thereby, this primitive gut now communicates with the exterior through your mouth here, through this region mouth, and posteriorly, caudally through the anal canal, terminal parts of the anal canal. So that is how you get the communication of gut cranially as well as caudally. That is actually produced by the rupture of two membranes. That is the buccopharyngeal membrane cranially and the cloacal membrane. So what happens next? So I was talking about all the development of GIT. I was using the term primitive gut. And where does this primitive gut comes from? It is actually this endodermal lined tube with the incorporation of yolk sac. So once you're hearing it, don't imagine that every part of your GIT has got different walls. Do you remember the mucosa, that is epithelial lining, submucosa, muscle coat, connective tissue? Everything are derived from, don't imagine like that, everything are derived from your endoderm. Only that epithelial lining will be derived from the endoderm, and rest all of the muscle coat and the connective tissue which surrounds it will be derived or developed from your splanchnopluric mesoderm. That thing should be in your mind always. Only that epithelial lining of the GIT is being derived from this endoderm. The surrounding muscle layer is being derived from the splanchnopluric mesoderm. Fine. Now can I ask you something? Is the whole of GIT, the epithelial lining, being derived from the endoderm? No. The majority of the part will be derived from endoderm, but the terminal part or that part very close to the exterior, that is in the cranial part you find it is the opening of the mouth, in the opening of the mouth, and in the terminal part of the anal canal, both in those exterior regions, what happens is ectoderm will ingrow into that part. So at the terminal part, very close to your mouth and anal opening, at the terminal part of the anal opening, you find the epithelium there is derived from the invagination of ectoderm. Only at that two regions. Rest every part of the GIT it will be derived from the endoderm. Okay. So read that. The same thing we have discussed. The folding of embryo occurs, and with the folding of the embryo you have got the primitive gut that is formed. That primitive gut will divide or subdivide into foregut, midgut and hindgut, and then you have got the rupture of buccopharyngeal membrane and the cloacal membrane. So with the rupture of these two, the primitive gut is now communicating with the exterior. So now what happens? That is the basic form in the development of GIT. The dorsal aorta will be there in the posterior abdominal wall, and initially during the process of development you get a large number of arteries. A large number of arteries will be going and supplying the gut. But later what happens is there are different branches will be there. Out of this, three branches will persist, and it is these three branches coming from the dorsal aorta which are further categorized as the ventral branches coming from aorta, which is going to supply the foregut, the midgut and the hindgut. Okay, so you find one artery that is mainly supplying all the structures, not all the structures, majority of the structures that is derived from the foregut. So the artery of foregut is celiac trunk. So what you see here, this is the dorsal aorta, and from the dorsal aorta you get this artery. This artery is going to supply the structures derived from the foregut, and that is celiac trunk. And next you get the artery of midgut, that is the artery of midgut. So the structures derived from the midgut will be supplied by the artery of midgut, and that is superior mesenteric artery. And then the arteries or the artery of hindgut is inferior mesenteric artery, which will supply those structures that is developing from the hindgut. So from the dorsal aorta you get three unpaired branches coming, which is going to supply each gut. Foregut, the artery of foregut. Which is the artery of foregut? It is celiac trunk. Which is the artery of midgut? It is superior mesenteric artery. Which is the artery of hindgut? That is the inferior mesenteric artery. Fine. So now you should go to further details of what are the structures that is derived from foregut, midgut and hindgut. So first, these are the main structures that is derived from foregut. First, esophagus. Esophagus. First of all, before reaching the esophagus, certain parts, the floor of the mouth region, then you have got the pharynx, then the esophagus, then the stomach, and then you find certain parts, first part and up to the opening of bile duct, certain part of the duodenum is also developing from foregut. That much region of the GIT. How much region? The floor of the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach and the duodenum till the opening of common bile duct. That much part will be developing from the foregut. And again, whenever you're thinking about the derivatives of foregut, you find small diverticulum also coming from different parts. So whenever a diverticulum, whenever a structure is coming as a diverticulum from the foregut, that also will be derived from the foregut. So say your respiratory system. Your respiratory system is actually coming as a small diverticulum from the foregut. So your respiratory system is also developed from foregut. Then your other digestive organs such as liver, gallbladder, pancreas, extrahepatic biliary apparatus, all these are also derived as a small projections or diverticulum coming from foregut. So they are also being developed from foregut. So this much structures you find they are developing from foregut. Then midgut. I told you foregut will end till the opening of bile duct, that is the duodenum, till the opening of bile duct. Trace it below. From that duodenum, from the opening of common bile duct in the duodenum, you trace it down. What you get? The remaining part of the duodenum, you get jejunum, you get ileum, cecum, appendix, ascending colon, and the proximal 2/3 of transverse colon. That is the point. Till that region, you find it is supplied by it is developed from the midgut and hence supplied by superior mesenteric artery. So what is that point? From the second part of the duodenum, to be more precise, it is from the opening of common bile duct till the right 2/3 of transverse colon. That much region is supplied by the midgut. Then what about the hindgut? From that part, that distal 1/3, from the right 2/3, it is supplied or it was derived from midgut. Then the rest region, the distal 1/3 region, then you get the descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and anal canal till the pectinate line. That much region from the right 2/3 of transverse colon, you get the left 1/3. Then the remaining part, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anal canal till the pectinate line is derived from or developed from hindgut. Why I am using the term till the pectinate line? Do remember in the initial slides I mentioned in the surface, in the terminal part, it is actually a projection or invagination of ectoderm. Do you remember that? So that is the region, that is the case why I am mentioning it is till the pectinate line. So these are the derivatives you get from foregut, midgut and hindgut. So now we are proceeding on towards the derivatives of foregut. So what are the derivatives of foregut? We have mentioned it: floor of mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, proximal half of duodenum. To be more precise, what is it? It is till the opening of common bile duct. Then you have liver, gallbladder, pancreas, extrahepatic biliary apparatus and respiratory system. So one more thing you have to note here is I was using the term floor of mouth. So from the floor of mouth, it is a small projections or diverticulum that further branches so as to produce the salivary glands. So remember, in the floor of mouth you find two salivary glands are opening. That is the submandibular gland and sublingual gland. So submandibular and sublingual glands are actually derived from the ectoderm or foregut, But always remember, parotid gland is produced as a small invagination coming from that ectodermal invagination. That is, I've told you that not whole of the mouth is derived from endoderm. At that junction of ectoderm and endoderm, you find parotid duct is developing as the diverticulum. So parotid duct will be ectodermal in origin, but these two, submandibular and sublingual, will be endodermal in origin. So these are the derivatives. Rewind once more. The floor of mouth, plus you have to think of submandibular gland, sublingual gland, pharynx, and very close to the pharynx you have got a diverticulum coming, from which develops the respiratory system. So the whole of respiratory system, esophagus, stomach, and proximal half of the duodenum till the opening of common bile duct. Plus you find some diverticulum coming from foregut, which forms liver, gallbladder, pancreas, extrahepatic biliary apparatus. So I think with that we include the derivatives of foregut. So in the next session we'll go to study the development of each organ, say the development of esophagus, stomach, like that. So I think I'll stop here, and in the next session we'll continue with esophagus. Okay, thank you.